Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So the New York House map, it initially got struck down and then they appealed it to the point where it looked like it was going to stay in place. Yet a court, a mid-level appellate court, a Democrat court, a court that was expected to rule in favor of the Democrats, actually struck down the map once more. Republicans are likely going to be able to potentially get a new map at this point. They are in the process of potentially appealing it again, so we don't want to get too much of our hopes up right now, but at the same point, it is very possible that this map might get struck down and Republicans could potentially gain several House seats in New York because this map is a train wreck. And not only that, we have the Florida map officially going into law as the legislature defected, as we know. I did a video on it about a week ago, to Ron DeSantis to draw the map, and you have the left melting down about this as well, which is pretty funny. But either way, very good map in Florida, potentially an improvement in New York. We're going to get into this, but first I have to tell you guys about our newest sponsor, C60 Evo. Now, nothing is more important than our health, our immune system, and we're struggling with an overload of questionable information to the point where we need to make sure we're able to take care of our mind and bodies. And because of this, I recommend C60 Evo. Now, I can tell you that C60 Evo is now a part of my daily routine. I love the increased energy, the increased mental focus, and best of all, just like thousands of other customers, I've noticed positive changes in my sleep. I wake up refreshed, confident that I'm taking care of my mind and body with one morning teaspoon per day of C60 Evo's olive oil product. So go to the link in the pinned comment below and take advantage of a 20% savings by going on subscription. You can cancel it at any time, and make sure to use my coupon code for an additional 10% off, REPOL, at checkout. So the New York Appellate Court, a Democrat appellate court, has admitted that the New York House districts were illegally favoring Democrats within their own state constitution. We saw this happen in Maryland, and now there's a new map where Republicans could pick off potentially one more seat, but now they may be redrawing the map in New York. This goes on to say that the 5-judge panel in Rochester said that Democratic legislative leaders have drawn the new House map to discourage competition and favor Democrats, knowingly ignoring the will of voters who recently approved the constitutional amendment outlawing the practice. If you remember, back in November, the same night where Youngkin won in Virginia, there was a statewide constitutional amendment on the ballot in New York that would have gotten rid of Democrat gerrymandering. And surprisingly, Republicans actually won the ballot initiative at the end of the day, statewide in New York State. And already you're seeing the very unpopular governor who gets booed at New York City sporting events and other top leaders in New York. Obviously, we're going to have Mark Elias come out, the guy who supposedly is the anti-gerrymandering crusader. However, he will do anything possible to keep in place these Democrat gerrymanders that are so ridiculous and so blatant, it's insane. But either way, we'll have to see, because this could change quite a bit in the House. Now, Republicans are likely going to take back the House regardless, but a few seats in a close future election can matter, especially if Republicans win big in 2022 and 2024. It's likely that 2026 is not going to be a year that's going to be super Republican favorable, to the point where it's like they might be at risk of losing the House. The Senate could be theirs for like 30 years. We talked about that in the last video, but the House is a little bit different. So it's very important. Every single race matters. And right now you saw, again, for the entire cycle, I did several videos on it, redistricting was not benefiting Republicans in the slightest. However, they picked it up in Florida. They might get 2 seats in New Hampshire. We'll have to wait and see. And New York, this map that is so bad might honestly be able to be appealed. And we went over this map in several recent videos, but some of these districts in New York City, like I said, just because New York is full of Italians doesn't mean you have to necessarily make the map look like spaghetti, but it does. I mean, you look at Jerry Nadler, also known as Gerrymandered district. You look at some of the Long Island districts like the Climbing district, as I mentioned in several past videos, in the 3rd district. They're just trying to make sure that Long Island and the New York suburbs have the least amount of red districts possible. I mean, you look at what's going on in Staten Island, and that district, Staten Island and South Brooklyn, are a fairly conservative part of New York City. They don't have a voice in this map, and this is really what the opposition thinks of you. Republicans rarely ever draw a map that is favorable like this to them. I mean, the closest thing we saw in a big state was what we saw in Florida, because Ron DeSantis actually knows how to use power at a state level, whereas a lot of other Republicans nationwide really don't know how to do. And Democrats understand power, so much so to the point where they're able to draw a map like this. However, constitutionally, can they get away with it? We'll have to see. Obviously, we understand that the activist liberal judges on the New York State Supreme Court might be a little bit more willing to say, hey, you know, this map right here is fair, because they're siding with their own political leanings more so than the actual principle, as the left usually does in this country. However, because you have this new amendment that passed through, and this is just so blatant, and the fact that you had a Democrat mid-level court decide to hand Republicans a little bit of a victory, at least in the meantime, maybe you will see this map being tossed out, or maybe just to prevent any further legal challenges, you will see a watered-down version of this map rushed through the legislature that might give Republicans 1 or 2 more seats, but also not necessarily catch the eye of these judges to have it struck down from a legal perspective, which is also a possibility. And either way, I think Republicans have a very good chance at getting a couple of seats out of the deal. Now, in terms of the other maps that have been proposed, the Democrat proposals in the past, early on at least, you saw some competitive seats in Long Island and some Republican seats here and there. And it was a much fairer map than what you see in terms of the current map that the Democrats decided to put through. So maybe they could go with something like that. The Republican commissioner's proposal was actually interesting. Now, this map is relatively fairer than a lot of people would anticipate, given the fact that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Republican seats or so, and you still have several toss-up seats. And obviously, yes, we understand New York is a heavily Democrat state. It voted for Biden. Biden got like 60% of the vote in New York. So Democrats are likely going to get more seats, especially because they control the redistricting process. But it's very important that if you could just pick off a couple of seats in New York, it definitely adds up to the total number of seats that are necessary to keep the House in any given year. And we look at this chart right here. This is going to be my favorite chart for a while. And this is basically calculated off of the fact that, let's say, for example, the national environment is even, then Republicans are going to have like 221 seats in the House. Now, if Republicans win the national ballot by 5 points, they're going to have 240. If the Trafalgar poll is right and they win it by close to 10, they're going to be at like 265 House seats. And this is the way it works. And you see a lot of these like steep climbs. That is because of dummy mandering a lot of seats in places like New York or Illinois or New Mexico, even though the maps are drawn significantly in the Democrats' favor. If Republicans do very well nationwide, they will be able to pick off some of those seats that they weren't supposed to pick off, and that's called a dummy mander. Let's say you draw every, let's say you have a state that's like R+3, for example, or D+3, and you have 20 seats in that state, and you draw all of them in the Democrat hands. So Republicans have like 0 seats, or maybe you give them a couple of vote sinks and the rest are going to be like D+5. Well, if the national environment is R+5 or above, oh, whoops, what did we do here? You know, it's you look at the map and Republicans would have been able to pick off a decent amount of seats they otherwise wouldn't be able to. And some of these maps are so ridiculous in terms of these power grabs that we see that Republicans potentially could be picking up some seats in states where you ordinarily wouldn't expect, because the wave is super big, which might be beneficial for them in the short term. But if you look at the long run and the national environment comes back towards even, those seats are going to be very hard for Republicans to keep, even if they do have a strong incumbent in power. So that's what it comes down to. But either way, redistricting is sort of looking up towards the end of it. I'm not really thrilled with the entire process. Obviously, we see that Democrats have gained about a net 6 seats or so from redistricting. Maybe Republicans could gain 1 or 2 from New Hampshire, or maybe the New York map, they rework it so the losses are mitigated. But either way, it is very possible that in a place like North Carolina, since there's a Supreme Court election that's coming up there, that Republicans could be able to flip it and get a new map out, and that might be able to get them a few seats in that state, because the new map that they drew was absolutely ridiculous, basically handing the state's control over to the Democrats. And you look at the map there that we see in North Carolina, and it's like there were going to be just 3 Democrat seats, and now they basically have it at 50-50 because of the legal process. But still, they're going to let maps in places like Illinois, New Mexico, all across the country benefit Democrats, especially up in the Northeast, Maryland, New Jersey, Connecticut, in some of the most ridiculous ways possible. And that's the way that it is. But like I said, because the national environment is going to be so steep for Republicans, you look at a lot of these light blue seats on this map potentially could be falling into Republican hands at the end of the day, and could make the gerrymanders turn into dummy manders, which would get Republicans more seats in the short term. So that's pretty much it. We'll do a video tomorrow on some of the new polls that dropped. We have a lot of good news in terms of the polling department out of New Hampshire, out of just the nationwide polls, as well as Oregon. Republicans are up in the governor's election by 18, or are they? We're going to have to analyze that. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Please like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle, out.